What's up everybody, I'm Charlie with Modern Hobbyist. I just finished making this miter saw station with a custom 3D printed stop block system, and in this video I'm going to show you the process I followed to make this thing so you can make one too. Let's get started. So my wife and I recently bought a house, and the very first thing we did was tear all of the old trim out of it. It was all beat up and ugly, and since we wanted to paint the whole house anyways, we decided to just replace it. Now, in order to help us cut all that new trim, we went out and picked up this brand new miter saw, only to realize that we didn't have anywhere convenient to put this thing. I could certainly cut hundreds of trim boards with this thing on the floor, but that frankly sounded awful. So instead, I'm going to build a custom miter saw station with a built-in stop block track so that I can easily make repeatable cuts. I should also mention that I specifically chose this Bosch miter saw for the way that it slides or glides compared to other miter saws. This model has what's called an axial glide system, which allows you to perform the same sliding cuts with the same range of motion, but it takes up much less space horizontally. Now, I'm not sponsored by Bosch or anything. I bought this saw with my own money, but I wanted to mention the design of the saw because it allows me to build a much narrower workbench. So the first thing I did was get the dimensions of the space this workbench is going in. Unfortunately, the previous owner poured these concrete blocks to mount their metal lathe on, so I'll have to work around them, but this workbench should actually do a nice job of covering those up. Once I had the rough dimensions of the space, I went into Fusion 360 and began modeling the workbench. Now, I may have gone a little overboard here, but I decided to make a rough 3D model of our entire shop for a couple of reasons. First, it really didn't take that long. Second, I wanted to see how the finished miter saw station would look in the shop. And third, we have several other project ideas for this space, so I'll continue to use this model in the future. Once I had the shop model finished, I started designing the miter saw station itself, which is actually a fairly quick process too. As long as you know your stock material, in my case 2x4s and 3/4 inch plywood, it doesn't take long at all. And it can be super helpful to create a 3D model for all of your woodworking projects so that you have something to reference back to and make cut lists from in the future. I designed my workbench to be modular so I can upgrade or extend any of the sections without having to rebuild the entire workbench. The saw then rests on a platform that connects to the two side sections. That way I can raise or lower the platform to accommodate a new saw. The last feature of this workbench is a strip of T-track on either side that I'll use to mount my stop block. That way, if I need the surface space, I can take the stop block off and still have a smooth work surface. Anyways, once I had the entire workbench designed, I created a cut list using an online tool so that I didn't waste any wood. There's tons of free options out there, but the one that I used is called OptiCutter, and it was by far the best option. You can create linear cuts as well as sheet cuts, and it will kick out a beautiful PDF that has all the information you need to get started cutting. Alright, so now that I've got the entire workbench designed, I know how it's going to look in my shop, and I've picked up all the wood, it's time to start actually building this thing. But before I start cutting into anything, I always make sure to protect my eyes with today's video sponsor, Stoggles. Stoggles is a visionary eyewear company leading a movement to reimagine how people care for their eyes. Over half of all eye injuries sustained in the United States happen at home, whether it's cleaning, housework, home improvement, or yard work. All of them could pose a risk to your eyeballs, which is why you need to make sure to always wear safety glasses. Now, I'm not talking about those abominations that you stole from your dad's workbench. No, Stoggles makes it easy by providing you with the protection you need that's also conveniently stylish, so you'll actually wear them. All Stoggles come with an anti-fog coating, blue light and UV light blocking lenses, ANSI Z87.1 certification, and side and top shields, all without making you look like a total dweeb. Plus, if you need corrective lenses, you can get them in your prescription so you can actually see how good you look while you're wearing them. My wife actually has a prescription pair and I have a regular pair, and we absolutely love them. So make sure to check the description for a link to Stoggles' website so you can get 10% off using the code MODHOB10. Huge thanks to Stoggles for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. All right, so I wanted to take a minute here to explain the stop block that I designed for this miter saw station. Now, if you're like my friends, you're probably thinking, why don't you just screw a 2x4 to the workbench like everyone else? Well, because to be honest, that's too easy. And here at Modern Hobbyist, we believe if it's not hard, it's not worth doing.
That's what she said.
So basically the stop block slides into the T-track, which is routed into the surface of the workbench. Lots of people use that in their workbenches, so I'm sure you've seen that before, but the stop block itself is where things get interesting. The stop block has a main body with some guide rails on the bottom to keep it aligned with the T-track, as well as a hole for the T-bolt to go through so I can lock it down into place. I also added a line marker that uses a small piece of acrylic to mark the distance from the saw blade, and I made it adjustable so that I can align it with my favorite part of the stop block, the flip stop. The flip stop is basically a 3D printed arm that's mounted to the stop block using some bearings and an M6 bolt. I also added some embedded magnets to it to make sure it stays either in the position or out of the way while you're cutting. Altogether, this thing costs about $5 to print, and since the rest of the parts are things I usually buy in bulk, I'd say all in all this thing only costs around $10 to make, which in my opinion is a small price to pay for the added functionality. Plus it looks pretty cool too. But one of the best parts about using a stop block with this T-track system is that if I find myself in need of extra work surface, I can simply remove the stop block and boom, an uninterrupted work surface for me to do whatever it is that I do here. Anyways, I want to give a huge shout out to Brad at Fix This Build That for the initial idea for this stop block. He made his out of wood and I wanted to make it 3D printable, so I modeled it up myself. I'll have the parts for this linked down below, and I'll also have a link to his video so you can check that out. Otherwise, let's get back to the build. And there you have it, folks. This baby is now fully operational, and honestly, it turned out awesome. Now I can easily make accurate and repeatable cuts on my miter saw, and if I need to, I can still use the entire work surface by simply taking out the 3D printed stop blocks. Underneath that work surface, I've got tons of storage space for any tools or totes that I want to get out of my way, and our shop vac fits perfectly into the nook underneath the saw platform for a quick and simple dust collection solution. In hindsight, I do wish that I had pre-drilled all the holes in the 2x4s, as I had a few splits while I was assembling the frame of the table, but none of them should compromise the strength of the workbench. They just don't look very great. I also decided to save some money on the plywood by going with a lower quality, so I'll have to see if the kind I got works. If not, I can always go and pick up some nicer plywood and replace these tops with it. Otherwise, everything else about this workstation turned out awesome, and now I have no more excuses keeping me from installing the trim in our house. Now, if you want to make one of these for yourself, I'll have plans linked in the description below that you can customize to fit your needs. I'll also have a link to all the parts I used, as well as the 3D printed stop block I designed, in case you want to add that to your miter saw station too. But that's going to be it for this project, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. It definitely was awesome finally getting to use this shop after waiting for so long to get it, and this project was a ton of fun to make. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future videos, and make sure to give it a like so YouTube forces it down everyone else's throats too.
That would be great. Okay?
Otherwise, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.